Greetings once again, you accursed. It's time for another episode of your goddamn favorite, not safe for work political pod, Curse of Politics. Jenni Byrne is here. Scott Reid is here. Let's get at it. Hey, we've got a fresh conservative leadership challenge. Okay, so maybe that's not the most surprising news, but it is new news. And so we'll dive into it. Jason Kenney did a childcare deal with the feds. How's that going to work out for him politically? Plus, the United Conservative Party convention starts this Friday, and we're going to have our own Curse of Politics correspondent on the ground in Alberta, Jenni Byrne. Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. are holding the first 3 Amigos summits since 2016. We'll talk about that, maybe talk about some personal summit stories. We'll discuss the just-ended Conference of the Parties Climate Change Conference and what it means for the Libs going forward. We'll do our cursed clipping of the week, and after that, I expect Gordon Vincent will make up an appearance to set up our Hey Yous. Scott and Jenni, how the hell are you?
I'm great, David. And you know what I'm really excited about is next week, I get to see you guys in person to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, at the Pilot.
In a bar. God love it. I'll be with you both in a bar. I'm excited because tonight, of course, I'm making my first start and goal for the Montreal Canadiens, and I'm really hoping I can turn things around for the franchise. I'm going to try to only let in 4 goals.
I'm wearing my jersey today. Because I felt I needed to, because the Cole Caulfield jersey that I ordered in August finally arrived this week.
Oh, nice.
Wow, I did not expect him to be with the Laval Rocket.
I know. I ordered a friend's son a Cole Caulfield t-shirt, and it just feels a little discordant right now. Is he doing okay in Laval? Is he scoring in Laval? Is he playing?
Yeah, he's doing well.
Okay.
No?
It's ridiculous. Yes, of course he should be with the Canadiens. They can't score. They have nobody who can score.
I don't know. Sometimes Armia gets the puck all the way to the, middle of the ice. Sometimes he hits the red line.
Yeah, it's just
maybe it's something about them though, because now Danault scores.
Danault does score. This is
unreal.
People find it sad and depressing when we normally talk hockey. Now it's actually sad and depressing because normally it's us basically shit talking all of the Toronto Maple Leaf fans out there, and we just can't do that right now.
No, there's no shit. No Habs fans are doing any trash talking of anybody else this year.
No.
That is for sure. All right, guys. So we got a lot to do today, so let's no more fucking around. Okay?
Let's get to this enormous and impressive agenda you've put together for us, David.
Thank you very much. So this conservative leadership thing keeps ticking along. Denise Batters started a petition yesterday to have an early review of O'Toole's leadership. There are rumors that this is a multi-stage plan to remove O'Toole. It does not seem like something one would do on your own. So is this a caucus-driven thing, a party membership-driven thing, or where is the pressure on O'Toole coming from right now?
Can I ask a favor? Jenni, you know everything about this. I know nothing. Can I just start though with one small quick observation?
Sure.
Because because I have no insight on the insider stuff. But there's one thing about it that drives me bananas, and I'm curious to hear if you agree or not with this. I don't understand a putsch, a coup, an insurrection effort that begins with a weak, not a strong punch, followed by a bunch of whispers about how all these other strong punches are coming. I think the worst thing you could possibly do is say to people, listen, it's multi-stage. We got a multi-stage process here. It's beautiful. You get the backyard opens and the landscaping is gorgeous. And then there's a lovely master bedroom with an ensuite and all the finishings, multi-stage. And so now, unless 50 members of parliament come forward, we're going to think this thing's a wet firecracker. So I don't understand that. So I'll stop there. That's just the how not to run a coup from my perspective. And now over to you, Jenni, who knows something.
I believe, though, that the first person who called for Jean Chrétien to step down publicly was Diane Marleau. So I don't know where you put that into your into your theorem there, but
yeah,
Well,
you guys,
we didn't orchestrate that.
We could actually do a multi-staged podcast on like coups that you guys have been behind.
We didn't authorize Deanne Marleau. We didn't say Deanne, right? We need someone to run over the top. Grab your rifle. Don't worry about your helmet. Leave your helmet. Go. Boom. Seize that gun turret. Go get it. We didn't do that.
Listen, I think the problem that Aaron has continues to be it's obviously kind of a there are a bunch of people that don't think he should stay on as leader, and he's really done nothing since the election to actually prove that he wants to stay on as leader. I think that's part of the problem, and we've talked about that. That there are a bunch of things he could be communicating on, a bunch of things he could be doing since the election, which he has not. He's been relatively silent, except for commenting on a non-existent coalition between the Liberals and the NDP, and commenting on different machinations within the party in terms of different national councillors, and now Denise. I think the problem is that they're not getting his people are not kind of getting the play. He has a problem within the party, and they are not fully getting it. And so I don't know whether it's planned, Scott, to what you're saying. I'm not sure whether it's multifaceted or whether there's going to be more to come. I do know, though,
multi-staged. It may also be multifaceted, but we've only been promised multi-stage at this point.
So I don't know what's coming next, but it seems from people that I've talked to, there are a lot of people that support Denise on this, and it's an interesting. Denise is an interesting person in terms of leading the charge, because she's someone that comes from both kind of the McKay side of things and the Andrew Scheer side of things. She was a huge supporter of Andrew, and has been friends and a supporter of him for years. And she was also a big supporter of Peter MacKay. And so I'm not sure if it is an organizational thing. But I think that the problem for Aaron, and if his people and him do not see it, is there are a lot of people that are supporting Denise. And I think there are going to be more people, and I will see how many people sign the petition.
Why lead with a senator? Like, if it is somebody's planning it, right? If we take them at their word, there are other shoes that are going to drop. So somebody gave this forethought. Why start with a senator? Like, I wouldn't start with a senator. I would say instantly you're open to the allegation of, well, you're not even elected. You have a less legitimate platform. So why wouldn't you start with at least a member?
Well, Denise is very well regarded within the Conservative caucus, so that may have something to do with it. And also, she has the balls to go out and do it. Sometimes it's just the person that's willing to actually go out and say what other people are saying behind the scenes, like
Deanne fucking Marleau.
But no, but But if you look at I think what it's telling is how vacuous the supporting tweets and comments are for Aaron's leadership race. Like it almost was written like it was like the screenwriters or the people that write the propaganda for Kim Jong-un. Like, I support the leader. The leader respects me and then gave me a shadow deputy cabinet minister position, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's none of it.
Rempel seemed genuinely angry. Yeah, was Rempel not genuinely angry?
Michelle seemed pretty passionate.
She seemed very passionate, but she is an island onto her own if she is.
Right.
Okay. No, but right. Did you guys get that? Did you guys get support out of that? And also, if there actually is support, we know how these things run behind the scenes. Is people are working the phones. They're working the phones to try to mitigate whatever damage there is. There is no one working the phones in support of Aaron.
When I saw those people putting up their lists of their tweets of support yesterday, I again, Scott, thought back to our exercise with Mr. Chrétien and his list of caucus supporters.
Yes.
And it occurred to me that when you're the leader and you start making lists of the people who support you,
yeah,
it very quickly becomes much more interesting who's not on the list than who is on the list. unless everybody's on the list, because it's assumed that everybody would be on the list. So I thought it was a kind of a paltry display of pushback yesterday, to be honest, in terms of the numbers.
I agree with that. I think this whole thing looks, like two boxers wearing oven mitts. I thought that the first punch was lame, and I thought that the response was peculiar because, as Jenni says, it's not only just working the phones. I think there's a lot of people who are sitting there kind of going, I don't know which way to go on this thing. How's it going to go? Like, is this the first cut and there's going to be 1,000 more, or is this a wet firecracker that's going to fizzle out? And so one of the things you look for is a spirited and robust defense. And if you're O'Toole, you're glad to see kind of a weak first punch. Then you say, all right, I'll take that first punch. I'll put down this thing fast and hard. And then the next group will be a little more leery. But you didn't see, it wasn't a forceful reply. So I think it means a lot of people sitting on the sidelines going, I don't know, man.
But Scott, it's not really a first punch. It's only a first punch publicly, but basically Denise is just saying what people have been saying for a month and a half since the election. Like, we've talked about it on the podcast. We've actually been like spreading news, David, on the podcast, because we've literally been talking about this for a month and a half. This is not.
We're off the list. We're not on O'Toole's list.
No, but
We're definitely not on the list.
But this is, no. We're definitely not. But this is something that is not.
There's no list we're on.
Pardon me?
There's no list that we're on. Nobody has us on their list.
No one's clamoring to include us among their list of supporters. Well, I've got David Herle. So back the fuck up.
No, but my point is that this is not surprising to anyone. Any conservative that I talked to yesterday was not like, oh, well, this is shocking that someone's coming out publicly and saying this, because there isn't the support for Aaron out there. So so I think that this is just the first shoe to drop. I don't think, Scott, it's going to be like a cataclysmic, like, oh my God. I think this is going to be kind of the water torture of what Aaron O'Toole's leadership is going to be. So Monday, we do the podcast live and at the pilot, and it'll be day one of the House sitting. It'll be when they elect the speaker. And so I think it's going to continue to be very, continue to be very interesting within the Conservative caucus and within the Conservative Party.
Have you ever used the word bilker, Hurly-burlyites? A bilker is a person or party who uses clever means to cheat other people out of something of value. Let's see if this situation passes the test. Right now, in rural communities all across Canada, a few billionaire-controlled cable companies are not using the government spectrum subsidies to do what they're supposed to do, which is to provide high-speed digital connectivity to the good people who live in rural communities. High-speed connectivity is key to delivering proper healthcare and education. It helps businesses and farmers compete with the latest technology. In short, it helps these communities thrive. I'd say that's something of value. Instead, these companies are using government social policy as an investment tool. They're taking the subsidies and just sitting on them, waiting, providing no service, building no infrastructure to help rural communities connect. Eventually, they resell the spectrum licenses on the secondary market for millions of dollars in profit. Some might call that clever. Others would call it profiteering at the expense of rural Canadians. Sad to say, this is not a one-time loophole. It's happening over and over again. As a technology leader with a social purpose, this is not how our presenting sponsor Telus does business. Telus believes that if you say you're going to work with government and take their spectrum subsidies for rural Canada, then you have an obligation, a responsibility to provide that service to rural Canada. To invest in our rural, remote, and Indigenous communities by building cell towers and other infrastructure. Here's a simple way to start. Right now, Telus could boost service and quality of life to over 250,000 households in Alberta and BC if spectrum that was being held for profit by others was simply unlocked. Go to telus.com/connectingcanada to learn more. How long can he hang on? Here's the context for my question. I sent you guys a Washington Post poll this week that showed that Biden is dropping like a stone not among Republicans, obviously, but among Democrats and independents. And he's dropping like a stone for two reasons. One of which is that Build Back Better as an idea is flopping with the general public.
Which I have to say to Scott. Scott hated that from the moment he said it.
I love it.
Sure did. And the second thing is that the inflation numbers are hurting politically. And so the economy, he's on the wrong side of the economy now. So if that were to happen in Canada, and 6 months from now, O'Toole were to find himself 5 points in the lead, how much would that change things?
But that's not the case. But that's a big hypothetical. Like Leger came out with a poll last week that had the Liberals up 8-9 points from the last election. It had the Conservatives at 26%, and the economic factors in Canada are the same as what they are in the U.S. Like Trudeau's rhetoric is similar to Biden's, and inflation is the same, and yet the Liberals are staying are not just staying high. They're actually we're down 8 points. So
right.
One could say that it's because Aaron hasn't been out doing anything. Like this is a criticism that I would have from a not just from a conservative point of view, but from a commentary point of view, is if he wanted to keep the job, go out and fucking show people that you want to keep the job. He's done nothing to show that in the last month and a half. He's basically been turtled, and so I think the issues with Biden are a whole host different. But I'm not sure when it will happen with Aaron. But I just don't see him leading the Conservative cause into the next election, because if I'm sitting there and I'm a caucus member, if we want to just purely look at it from self-interest, Kerry Diot won. He was Edmonton Griesbach. He lost to the NDP in this last election. He got 51% of the vote in the 2019 election. The NDP got 25% of the vote, and he lost. He went down 15 points in the election. And so if I'm sitting there in Ontario and I've decided to carry the flag, but I'm looking at it in self-interest, do these MPs think that they can win the next election if they continue to go down by 10 to 12 points every election? So
that a couple things,
and not be conservative.
Right. So a couple things.
I don't get his strategy of silence either, Scott. If you could expand on what makes sense about him being so passive since the election. I don't know what it is.
I don't know that I can expand on that, because I think there's another comparison with Biden that reinforces everything Jenni just said, which is that I think Biden looks weak, right? And that's always been a bit of a question mark, because, in part because of his age and so forth. But I think he looks weak. He can't get the packages through the House, and what does is so watered down, and he's fighting with his own kind of woke caucus and all that kind of stuff. And so he looks weak and ineffective at a time when the economy feels like it's tilting. And so people are and so silence from O'Toole, I think, creates the same impression. So to me, the only reason you could be strategically silent in the aftermath of yesterday, in the sense that you push out, you decide, you make a proactive decision. I will have a burst of Palace Guard come out and fight the first wave for me, and have a whole long, but more robust than we saw yesterday, and more vocal and more vicious, frankly, than we saw yesterday. And then you come in behind it. But this isn't a studied strategic silence. He's been silent since the election, and he's obviously, as our friend Campbell Clark said, been scared up a tree most of the time. But the second thing is, usually in a situation like this, to take out a leader, something that has to happen usually happens relatively soon, is that either a rabbit or a rival emerges. And by a rabbit, I mean someone like Michael Heseltine. The person around, they would say, and we know this guy probably isn't going to end up being the leader, but he can be the alternative that leads the critique and hammers into the ship bow that is the bow of the ship that is O'Toole. And then the rival, is the other, sort of situation where you have them, Turner, Chrétien, Martin, all that, those who around which somebody. So will we see this remain solely about O'Toole, or will there be, a rabbit or a rival emerge?
Well, we'll see. There's different things that have happened. Like you talk Chrétien Martin. That's like probably the most well known. If you look at Stockwell Day after the 2000 election, it was kind of 2000 and it was the spring and then summer of 2001 when he finally kind of stepped down, and then it became rumored that Stephen Harper was looking at running for the Alliance leadership. And
but
then,
am I right? And not really until he was really dead and bleeding on the floor. Is that right? Like it did.
Yeah,
like it never felt like Harper was leading that, right?
No, but and by the way, he wasn't. And that's the thing. There appears to be no one person that's leading this against Aaron. It's just it is a movement within the Conservative Party, within people that that feel that Aaron's continued leadership is going to be very bad for the party. Which is
O'Toole should hope that a challenger emerges, Scott, because that would be a better situation for him if he could run against somebody as opposed to running against perfection, which is what he's running against now.
But
right?
David,
that's exactly where I was headed.
But David, do you think he could actually do that? And watching how he's kind of handled himself since the election, do you think that him and his people could actually translate that into something? They could actually translate that into something.
Who knows? But as David says, it's a better scenario than allowing everybody to say whatever I imagine on the other side of the equation is what he's running against, because you can't defeat the phantom.
But he's not gonna have that, and so it's going to continue to be the slow drip. So he has to actually get it together because he's not gonna have this unicorn person that's going to come out against him, because there isn't one. It's just his problem actually is that there isn't one. His problem is that there is just many people within the party who feel that any alternative right now is better than him.
Then call the question. Right. Then you got to drive to call the question. You got to drive to a resolution. Otherwise, you Clark this thing and you end up in Winnipeg eating shit.
He should call the question.
You know what's interesting about it is I don't hear one thing. I don't hear is anybody suggesting that they made a mistake by not choosing McKay.
No, it doesn't seem to be about McKay at all, eh?
So it's not like 84 in the Liberal Party where people go, "Holy Christ, we had a choice between two guys, and we made a terrible decision. The other guy was way better."
Yeah, or Mulroney and Clark, right? Like the Mulroney forces aren't sitting in Montreal drinking and getting mad.
There's nobody's talking about McKay, right, Jenny?
Yeah, but I don't think anyone's talking about anyone. The only leadership they're talking about is Aaron. So, whether Peter runs or not is irrelevant. The thing is, there are factions within the party from different factions within our party, from fiscal conservatives to social conservatives to democratic reformers to guys in the West who all think that if we go into the next election with Aaron, we are going to lose ground seats, and ultimately he's not leading the Conservative Party the way that people feel that it should be led.
Well, I'll tell you, if I was
suspect we're going to be coming back to this. I suspect we're going to be coming back to this in subsequent weeks, so maybe we could leave it for now. So last week, I told you about the battery electric locomotive our sponsor CN just ordered. It might be hard to imagine batteries powering something that weighs hundreds of tons, but that's the sort of technology CN is considering. The fact is, railroads will need alternate forms of propulsion in the low-carbon world we're hurtling toward. And now CN has formally committed to setting a new target, net zero emissions by 2050. Among other things, that means CN intends to eventually stop burning fossil fuels in its fleet. It's pretty clear, especially after the declaration in Glasgow last weekend, that there is still some hesitation among the governments of the world to make expensive, politically difficult commitments. It's also clear that if we're going to keep average temperatures from rising more than 1.5 degrees, business is going to have to step up and help lead, which is what CN is doing. It is the first North American railroad to formally commit to setting a net zero target by 2050. CN is now part of the UN's race to zero. It's all a process, as they say. Since 1993, the company has reduced the intensity of its greenhouse gas emissions by 43%, meaning it has avoided more than 48 million tons of emissions. CN also continues to lead other railways in reducing fuel consumption. CN trains consume about 15% less fuel per gross ton mile than the industry average. In 2020, CN achieved its best rate of locomotive fuel efficiency ever, beating the record it had set the year earlier. And as I've pointed out here more than once, rail is already a pretty green way to move heavy freight over land. One train takes hundreds of trucks off of our highways. CN's vision is to serve its customers by creating stronger, more dependable, cleaner North American supply chains. That's what the future demands. And as you know, the future is rushing right at us. Trudeau's going down to Mexico for a Three Amigos summit. Canada's looking for exemptions from Buy America measures. Biden's fighting for his political life. I don't think he's in any position to be generous about things like that. So I presume that the government comes back empty-handed from its requests. But nonetheless, these things are always positive photo ops, right? It's just a good thing for the government to do.
I guess.
No?
Listen, I'm going to leave this to you guys. I never personally got to be part of one of the Three Amigos conferences.
I went to the Bush Ranch, the Western White House, for a Three Amigos thing. That was pretty cool in Texas, and everybody went and bought cowboy boots, and that was pretty cool. And the president of Mexico at that time was 6'9", so it made all the photo ops quite interesting. Everybody had to buy orange crates, but first of all, I hate the phrase Three Amigos. I know it was coined I think it was a Chrétien quip or something like that. I hate it. It's a shitty movie, by the way. Like shitty movie. And, David's offended. I don't like the movie. And I don't really like Three Amigos. I don't know. I just think it instantly characterizes the thing as silly. And it's like, the Three Amigos, they're going to take out guns that have bang that come out of them, little flags, it's just water pistols. It sounds silly. So
it's definitely not as serious as the G20. Agreed.
That's where exactly correct, Jenny. Thank you for that helpful intervention. So anyway, I don't know but as you say, David, the fundamental dynamic is unless you hope that, they'll talk presumably about trying to cooperate across North America and across borders. I hope to God they say something substantial about supply chain and trying to work out ports and get shit off of ships and onto rail and roads so that, there will be Christmas, as opposed to me just wrapping the books that are on my shelf and giving them to my children and saying, here, Santa went to the library this Christmas. But, Biden's in no position. He's in no position to give anything. He is too weak at home to give abroad. So it's tough. I'd be lowering expectations and trying to make it nothing but a photo op. It's risky.
That was the COP dynamic too, right? In that he's really limited by domestic politics and what he could say at the COP conference in Glasgow. So now that thing's all wrapped up, I guess the question that I would have for you two out of COP is there was seemingly no momentum out of it. There was disappointing performances by China, by India, and frankly by the United States, the three jurisdictions that have to. So what are the implications of that for Canadian domestic climate policy? Does it make it more difficult for the Liberals to keep ramping up their fight against climate when they come out of a conference like COP and the world seems not on the same page?
Yeah, well, this has always been the debate that we've had. This has been the conversation we've had. It's easy. So who are like the European nations to say to India that they need to completely to go off fossil fuels when they're a developing nation, and the fact that wealth and standard of living is being increased because of the use of fossil fuels. So who are the European nations to say that?
Well, that is one of the issues at COP is the developing nations saying, actually, this is your responsibility to fix this because you put all the GHGs in the air. It's not our job to fix it, and we can't afford to fix it. I don't know why the Western world just wouldn't pay for India to replace their coal with nukes.
Well, because nobody can afford, but this goes into nobody can afford it. This is all like a shell game that we've been talking about. It's the what we talked about last week with the $130 trillion. I mistakenly said $1 billion last week with the $130 trillion fund that your buddy Mark Carney is supposedly going to be running to turn the entire world green, and it's not going to happen. This is the problem. So this is where we're at. We can have like kind of esoteric high level discussions, but is it actually going to happen? And Biden's problem is that he can't even get his clean energy policies through the House, let alone get it through the American electorate. And if you look at the polls in the U.S., it's looking like if the midterms happen this year as opposed to next year, the Democrats are going to get like wiped out. And so I think that a lot of countries, including Canada, are going to have to look at domestic realities in terms of what they're willing to tell Canadians, or what they're willing to tell their citizens in terms of how much money they are going to have to pay, how much it's going to cost to drive your car and what have you under these policies. And Canada seems the only country willing to say that they're willing to have their citizens eat it.
Well, I don't think that's true.
I actually think, Jenny, that to be honest, I thought there was only two positive things coming out of COP for me. And I thought Mark was one of them, because as it becomes obvious that governments are not going to do what they need to do on a timely basis, it becomes even more critical that we get the power of the market involved in shifting this. And so I think that his efforts to move private sector money toward climate change solutions is one of the two positive things that came out of it.
You think 130 trillion is a real realistic number?
No, I think he's got most of the major. Listen, I don't know what the deal is. I think he's got most of the major financial investment funds and organizations in the world making a commitment to adjust their investments.
But they did in Paris. They did in Paris. They did in Paris for $100 billion, and they didn't spend that.
No, that's different. That's governments committing to give. Yeah. That's governments committing to give developing world $100 billion. They should have done that then. They better fucking do it now. But this is different. This is harnessing the power of the market to make the right decisions. And the market is, of course, many times more powerful economically than government.
But David, the $130 trillion is bigger than the entire world's GDP. Like, let's just.
Well, I don't know. That's a stat you've said, and I don't know that, but I know it is the cumulative total of these investment organizations' holdings.
It's like 6 times how much actual American currency is in circulation.
But that's a false argument. Okay, and here's why it's a false argument.
No, it's not. It's a logical
Yes, it is.
argument.
Let me finish and I'll explain. The reason it's a false argument is that you may label it 130 trillion, which is, I think what the accumulated value of all the assets of all the organizations that have signed on. And of course, not every single one of those dollars is going to be spent on turbines, wind turbines, okay? But what it does mean, and what is indisputable, right, absolutely indisputable, is that big finance, institutional investors, pension funds, these guys are saying, we are withdrawing from carbon-intensive industries, and we are looking for opportunities elsewhere. And that has been the trend, and it is intensifying in a significant way.
But
and
these
pledges,
Brad Wall told me it was now the biggest problem in the oil patch in Western Canada.
Pass the hat trying to get investments in a pure oil and gas play right now.
Companies aren't investing in Canadian in oil fields. Okay, what about Brookfield? They're moving away.
You can play this hypocrite game all you like, but it doesn't get you around the fact that big money is moving away, and so we can either adjust to that reality and figure out how to help those people transition and how to build a manufacturing base that is more sustainable financially as well as in terms of the sector.
They are moving away from Canadian oil and gas. They are moving. You think the big companies aren't then moving to like Africa and other continents in terms of where there's actually no You don't think that like big companies are still not producing oil and gas? They're just not doing it.
Well, my understanding is that there's still money being invested in oil and gas, but it's being invested in oil and gas that has lower emissions intensity for its extraction than the oil sands do.
That's
second thing I
bunch
thought
of things
was
are
positive
happening.
about a COP,
So
second thing I thought was positive about a COP was
a bunch
the
of
fact
things are
that-
happening.
was the China-American agreement to continue talking. Because surely when you look at this COP business, you say, this is a process that will never work. This is a process that is bound to fail. And really what we need to have happen as a world is for China and the United States to go away and agree on what needs to happen to save the planet and just tell us what the fuck we're supposed to do. This every country in the world meeting is never going to get anywhere.
Okay, so how was that? And sorry, you said that was positive?
That would be positive, yeah.
But China didn't even go to COP.
Yeah, they did.
Well, yeah, they really didn't go.
But they made an agreement at the end of the COP with the United States on continuing to have bilateral discussions. And my hope out of that would be that
thank God the U.S. and China are going to continue talking. Well, how wonderful that is for the environment.
Okay, but look, we can. It's easy to take pot shots and say, gosh, an agreement between 200 countries turned out to not actually be that overwhelming. Shocker. It isn't. But I do think that it's indisputable that coal is on the endangered species list. Like, it's just cumulatively, it has become more and more and more impolitic for investors and for countries.
But that's opposite of what David is saying, because China is like building coal-fired plants like on a weekly basis.
This is what Scott's saying. So I'm just trying to make my own point, right? Which is that we can be cynical about it all, and you can be successfully cynical about it all. And you can say, well, you know, what they agreed to was shitty and all that stuff. Except that if you would also be equally, if not more, outraged by a substantive agreement that said, all right, well, we are going to see worldwide withdrawal of fossil fuel subsidies, then, you know, you're left saying, well, what is it that you want? What is it where we're headed? Here's what is, I think, indisputable. And no amount of cynicism or whataboutism or pointing your finger and saying these people are hypocrites because they fly in airplanes is going to help. And that is that major money in institutional investors is moving away from carbon intensive industries. That's a fact. And that's going to affect Canada more than it's going to affect others. And unlike others, like China and the United States, we don't have some huge domestic market that can take up some of that slack and still find a way to keep us in clothing. So we are going to have to adjust. We're going to be disproportionately affected by this. And over time, COP11 felt like bullshit, and COP16 felt like bullshit, and this COP felt like bullshit. But you know, over time, the cumulative impact is you can't ignore this issue, and it becomes more and more difficult to say, well, I'll just deflect it by being cynical and smartassy. It doesn't get us anywhere. And this thing is not, we can't just close our eyes and think it's going to go away. It ain't.
But Scott, like, the Americans didn't sign on to most of the provisions at the end, especially on like the electric car shit. You've got countries like Germany, which is now the fourth largest emitter of coal in terms of, because they've got rid of nuclear. So like it's easy for us to all say that it's extremely important, but no one's actually acting like it's important. This is why.
Well, that's really a point. I mean, that's really a point that resonates with me, Jenny. That really rings true with me, because I can't as a citizen get my head around the science that is unequivocal about the consequences of missing targets and missing dates, and that everybody seems to accept that science, and yet the behavior doesn't correspond to that at all. You do not see the sense of urgency out of anybody that you would expect to see if you believe these consequences were going to occur on this time frame.
Because eventual problems always feel less significant than immediate problems. So that's just, I mean, that's been discussed backwards and forwards. So yeah, you can say it's illogical, but like it is what it is. I just think at the end of the day, Canada will pay, even if we want to like label all this quite correctly as a political exercise. We want to label all this half-assism. Canada is still going to suffer disproportionately from the effects of this half-assism. And so we can either say, well, this is where this thing is moving, and we got to try to help people in oil-producing parts of the country, and we got to figure out how to build a more sustainable economic foundation for them and for all parts of this country. Or we can say, fuck it, we'll just close our eyes and wait to the very end of this thing. But at the end of the thing is a brick wall.
Yeah, well, there's so many imponderables. I mean, I wish I heard more from the government too about what the economy looks like after all this. Like, what is the plan to take advantage of this? Where are the strategic plays to reposition Canada? Because we're, over time we're going to lose. We are losing a dramatic part of our economy.
Well, 10% of our GDP is oil and gas based. 25%
our balance of payments, it's like 30% of our balance of payments.
25% of our exports.
We use that to get American currency.
Yes. And people's households all across, whole large chunks of the country. It's why I don't understand why the last budget.
But this is the issue. People are not going to stop driving cars. So it's just a matter of whether we are going to use oil and gas produced here, whether it's going to be Canadian oil, or whether we're going to ship it in from countries that, by the way, do not have.
You make it sound like that's our choice. That's not our choice. Financial markets are taking that choice out of our hands. Sorry.
No, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, they are. They're not. You're not going to be able to finance.
Besides, the one thing we're going to pull off, besides, Jenny, the one thing we are going to pull off on this whole thing is electric cars. People are going to want electric cars. They're better.
No, they don't want electric cars because
they will want electric cars. They're better.
Okay, but there was a study out in California where people that had electric cars were asked if they were going to buy their next car was going to be electric, and 40% said no. Do you know why?
No.
Yeah, because they didn't want to sit for 5 fucking hours while they charged their car up.
But that's like saying in 1916, I don't want a car because I don't want to have to turn that fucking crank. Like, these things will change.
Okay, but then they have to change. And also, from a practical point of view, they then will have to change because we do not have the hydroelectricity to be able to charge all of our electric cars.
That's a big fucking issue.
And that's why you got to bring on nuclear, and that's why we're going to have to remap the whole grid and figure out how we do it. And you just go back to the household impact that you're talking about. It's why, when we park $17 billion in a budget and say this is going to be helping for the transition, what the fuck? Where did it go? Why aren't we saying, I always make this comparison, but we help people in Newfoundland through the cod fishery, and we said, okay, well, we're going to help them. We've got to do that on a nationwide basis for the oil and gas. Well, we just got to say we're going to spend.
I think the vision is a bit small. I think the vision is a bit narrow right now.
Yeah,
but Scott, the difference is what did COD attribute to our GDP and our tax base?
I know, but that, to my mind, that's why we should be more alarmed.
That is a big factor that the governments have to look at, and they're not. So it is easy to say that poof, it's gone. But how does getting rid of oil and gas affect Canada's GDP?
But you can't stand on a tree branch that's being slowly sawed off by saying there's more room here. Eventually the limb's coming down. So you got to figure out how do I get people someplace else in a way that's economical.
Okay, guys. We're running out of time, and we can't leave this show without Jenny's report from Alberta, without setting up Jenny's road trip to Alberta.
What will happen?
Jenny, when are you going out?
I am leaving on Thursday. I'm back Sunday.
Okay.
Is it Edmonton or Calgary, or where is it?
Calgary. No one wants to go to Edmonton. No offense to my friends.
Oh, that's mean.
That's a beautiful river.
They're playing soccer. They're playing Go Canada, go Alphonso Davies. They're playing soccer in Edmonton tonight. It's only going to be -8. Fuck.
Oh, no. Edmonton, I believe, is the coldest city of more than 1 million people in the world.
No, I think Moscow is.
Is Moscow north of Edmonton?
I don't know.
I don't know if Moscow is north of Edmonton.
This podcast has slipped into tune in and listen to us talk about things we don't know.
Actually, that's what it always was.
Is face heavy? Like, if I put it in my pocket, would it hold me down?
Sorry, David.
Jenny, what's going to happen out there this weekend?
Listen, I'm going to be very interested because Jason's got some of his own issues with the base of the UCP. I'm a Jason fan, as probably people listening to the pod know. So I'm looking forward to going out and seeing people. But we'll see where people are at. It'll be very interesting. The Brian Jean dynamic is interesting, allowing Brian to run in the nomination for the Fort McMurray seat that the MP left or the MPP left or MLA left and ran for Aaron and won. And Brian Jean kind of shot himself in the foot by putting out a very dog whistle message against his nomination opponent. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But I think that
my opponent, who happens to be of Nigerian descent, just in case you're interested,
complete dick move.
Not even a dog whistle. May or may not matter to you. I think I'll just point that out. It's not a dog whistle because everybody can hear it.
Yeah, it's a fucking referee's whistle.
Well, and then his response was, "Oh, it was a volunteer that put it out."
That's always leadership, huh? I've spoken to him. I've talked to him about not mentioning people's Nigerian backgrounds, and he promises not to mention that the man is Nigerian in the future, especially if he's in Nigeria, which we don't plan to go to. Yuck. Fucking
so 22 ridings, Jenny, have submitted things that they want an early leadership review.
Yeah.
Don Braid, the longtime columnist for the Calgary Herald, said this week. He said the attacks on Premier Jason Kenney's leadership within his own party are so intense that some might think he'll just give it up. Not a chance. Not this guy. The quiet counterattack is rising in advance of the UCP general meeting that starts November 19th at Grey Eagle Resort. So his article is about how Kenney is working to take back the organization. And, it's interesting because when you're the leader, that's what gets away from you, right? You're in this bubble in your government and you're surrounded by your bureaucrats and cabinet ministers. And it's the ridings that get away from you. You stop paying attention to them. You stop being in touch with them. So he has a riding-based strategy to get back, and it starts presumably with beating Brian Jean for the nomination.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see. Listen, it's a big thing to put out there, especially if he ends up not winning. Because Brian Jean does have a following. He was the MP for years prior to becoming the leader of his party and Wild Rose and what have you. So Jason, the thing is, by putting that out there, Jason needs to actually win it, because not winning it is a huge loss. The problem, though, is how I look at it is Jason's only been he's been leader and premier for 3 years, give or take. He shouldn't have lost the party at this point. Like, one of the things, one of Harper's strengths is the party always stayed with Harper. It was he always knew what was going on within the party. The riding associations were him. Sure, there were blips here or there, and that's how you guys did well under Martin over Chrétien, right? And so we know how important this stuff is. So Jason. So I hope Jason pulls it off, but just saying you're taking over the ridings and they're coming back to you doesn't mean it happens.
Right.
Let me say this, the poor bastard took over.
Yeah.
And you're faced with a decline in your central economic activity that you do not control. And then you've got COVID come along, a once in a lifetime thing, hopefully, that your province is bitterly divided about. It's hard to imagine there would be a popular premier of Alberta right now.
Yeah, but you could do things like where I've disagreed with Jason's strategy is I was happy to see him kind of put the gloves on a bit, put his elbows up a bit with Trudeau yesterday in the announcement they made on childcare. But he's been loath to do that. And I'm not really understood why. He stayed very silent during the federal campaign. He stayed silent during the municipal campaign, which had the referendum on equalization and other things. And if I was Jace, if I was around the table advising Jason, I would have been like, go out and balls in. Like basically, I would have been pounding on Trudeau for the entire campaign, and I would have been pounding on Trudeau for the equalization for the municipal campaign. And so he was very quiet during that period, and I think that that was a mistake. So I'm glad to see him putting up his dukes a bit.
What's the time? I don't want to get too in the weeds and stuff, but like, what's the timeline? So 22, sounds like a lot, like that's whatever it is, a quarter of his, out of 87 or whatever that is, right? So like, it's a lot of constituency associations, a lot of riding associations. And so he's got, what does it mean? Like when will there be a vote on his leader? Will there be a vote on his leadership? When will there be a vote on his leader? Like, how does that unfold? Like, what's his timetable? And I'm thinking about it in relationship to the general election, because, if people want to dump him,
Braid said Kenny has another resolution from a friendly riding association to get rid of the 22 out of 87 rule.
Right. And nip this thing in the bud.
So he's got a constitutional means of defeating that.
So if he wins that vote and he beats Jean,
that's not nipping it in the bud. That's actually just getting like, it's kind of like,
fair point.
That's a technical win.
Yeah.
Technical win.
That's not a win. That's we're just going to put the dirt underneath the carpet and no one will see it.
But ultimately, like, if you think, let's get rid of Jason, like, you're looking at the election, you're saying we're all going to get slaughtered. So you have to think that there's somebody else that's going to get you less slaughtered. But I don't, like, Brian Jean isn't going to let you get you less slaughtered. If
I was running against him, I would never call him anything but Brian Jean. Any all candidates debate anything, I would just call him Brian Jean.
Monsieur Jean makes a very good point.
All right, Gordon Pinsent, ladies and gentlemen. Gordon Pinsent.
Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats. The Hey Yous are about to begin.
All right, who's got a Hey You?
Scott, you go first.
Okay, I have a weird Hey You. My Hey You is an idea. All right, an idea I'd like to see. I'd like to see the Minister of Finance federally, Chrystia Freeland. I'd like to see the Minister of Transport. I'd like to see the Minister of Public Safety. I don't know if there's other ministers that need to attend.
All get on a train. And go across Canada.
Right, but I want to be carbon sensitive, so I think it should be one of those trains that you pump up and down, okay? Like you'll be like Laurel and Hardy, and make your way. It's going to be tough going when you hit the foothills. But,
Laurel and Hardy.
No, I'd like to see Finance Minister, Transport Minister, Public Safety Minister at a minimum get together and say, listen, we are holding a briefing, not a news conference, not a bunch of talking points. I'd like to see them hold a briefing, a publicly televised briefing, and say, here's the deal. And we're going to walk you through a PowerPoint. We're going to walk you through a deck. We're going to walk you through a breakdown of what's happening around our border in terms of ports and the choke off of supply, and where there are choke ups and where they're not, and what the pressures are. And we're going to talk intelligently about what the problems are and what they're not. We're going to talk intelligently about what the role of the private sector is in resolving that, what we can do with rail, what we can do with roads, what we can do with others in the private sector, the retail sector. I want to see them talk about all these things, break it down and say, here's our relative role. Here's what we're going to try to do to contribute to some kind of solution on this thing, because this is a giant challenge. And, give a scenario. Say the worst case scenario is this problem's going to last for 24 months or 18 months. The best case scenario is we get this thing fixed in 8 months. Like, walk us through this thing, explain it to people and say, here's what we're doing. This is our relative share of how we can try to fix it. Here's what we're going to say to our allies and partners and trading partners. Here's what we're going to say to the domestic industry. Here's the support we're going to provide in a targeted way. Walk us through this thing, because Christmas is coming. And I'm sorry, but Baby Yoda ain't going to be under the tree because people aren't going to be able to get the stuff they want. Like, show leadership on the issue, explain it, insulate yourself politically because you've shown leadership on the issue. And you know what? God love us. I know we're about politics and it's all pure cynicism here on the podcast, but fuck, it might even help. So that's what my Hey You. Like, let's take this thing and explain it to people and try to make it better.
It seems like a lot of hard work for a government that doesn't like to work with its hands generally.
Well, my Hey You is shorter, but it's somewhat the same. So My hey you is to the Liberal government, to Chrystia Freeland, Minister of Finance. Let's get some kind of fall economic statement. Let's get some indication that the government realizes the problems that the Canadian economy is about to face. Like we are, for the reasons that Scott talked about, we are about to hit a giant wall in terms of inflation, which continues to creep up, which could lead to a higher rate of interest rate, which could be absolutely a cataclysmic. And so there's been a lot of photo ops. There's been a lot of doing nothing. There's been a lot of, going to COP. There's been a lot of walking around with your shoes in your hand and doing shit like that. What Chrystia Freeland needs to do is come out and do an actual economic statement that shows that she knows and the government knows that the Canadian economy is teetering right now on a bit of a cliff.
Excellent. My hey you goes out to Aaron O'Toole. And if I was you, I would find a major speaking opportunity. I would create a major speaking opportunity, and I would give a speech right now that outlines my vision of the Conservative Party and my take on the Trudeau government and my plan to win the next election. Because you are getting nibbled to death right now, and nobody defending you knows what they're defending. What the fuck is the stake in the ground that you represent now? Is it what you ran on in the leadership? Is it what you ran on in the election? Is it something that you've learned since both of those two exercises? What the fuck is it are you about? What's worth saving? You are a political loser. Your opponents are right about that. So what is it about you that makes you worth saving? Put something on the table, so at least if you are in the fight, you've got something to fight about. That's my hey you. You guys, I fucking love seeing you, and I'm so excited to see you in person next week. It's going to be awesome.
I'm really looking forward to it too.
I'm going to drink the Humber River of beer on Monday night.
And I have friends
and that's
in.
Before the pod.
The friend of the pod, Brooke Pickett's coming in for
right on
Monday night.
All right.
Oh, awesome.
A fancy drink with an umbrella. We'll be awaiting Brooke.
All right. I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Telus, and our sponsor, CN Rail. And I'd also like to thank all of the accursed out there for listening to the show. And Sky Point to everybody. Mike Robinson, I put a little shout out to our old friend Mike Robinson on Twitter yesterday, and I've been thinking about him ever since. And every time something makes me really laugh, I think of Mike. Anyway, so
hallelujah.
Till next week, everybody, live and in person from the pilot, Curse of Politics. See you then.